Hey y'all! Well, we're going to do a video about the new Psvane Horizon 1287 tubes. And first I want to show you what I auditioned them in. It was my color preamp driving these KT120 monoblocks. And these have a early production Tungsol KT120 6EJ7 that's triode strapped, driving these Thermionic Lab output transformers. These are just fantastic sounding amps. Driving them, I'm using my color preamp, and it uses a pair of 12AU7s and a 6CA4 rectifier tube. And this amp features adjustable input gain with the volume control on the output, which is kind of a unique thing, but it's a great sounding preamp. It does highlight the tubes because there's no feedback, and it definitely will show a noisy tube up. That's one of the problems I've run into, especially with new old stock tubes, is if the tubes are microphonic or they've got any kind of noise, this preamp's going to pick it up. And it's created a pretty high reject rate on new old stock tubes and even some new production ones. So, what tubes have I tried in this? Tried the Electro-Harmonics, regular pin, gold pin. On those two, the regular pin, do not recommend using for a 1287 at all. They sound terrible. They're just, to me, they're flat. They got no life to them. They sound muddy. They're just not enjoyable to listen to at all. Conversely, the gold pin ones sound really good. And in the past, they were my go-to new production 1287 tube. And I know a lot of people aren't a big fan of the 1287, and I can understand why, because there's a lot of dog 1287 tubes out there. So the other ones I've tried are the JJs, both the normal and the gold pin. The normal is kind of okay. It's not my favorite. It would do in a pinch. The gold pin, conversely with the Electro-Harmonics, is actually worse to me than the regular pin in the JJ lineup. It, again, sounds just flat, kind of muddy. It doesn't have a lot of bass thump or punch to it, and it doesn't have much detail. And that's kind of what's lacking in all of the 12AU7 tubes that I've mentioned so far, is they're not a very detail-oriented tube. There's definitely something left on the table as far as clarity and just bringing out the details in the music. So what have I been using? Up to this point, I've tried Psvane, I've tried Tungsol, I've tried the Made in Japan ones, I can't remember the exact brand of those, and then RCA clear tops, and those are what I've ended up using. And I almost hate to say it because I don't want to drive the price up of them, but those RCA clear tops up until this point have been my favorite 12AU7 by a pretty large margin. And that's what I've been delivering these color preamps with, is a pair of new old stock hand-selected 12AU7s. The problem with that is, while they're fairly cheap on the used market still, I get a pretty high reject rate. And I find that probably at least 30% of them, they still test well, and I don't blame the seller because they're just putting them in a tube tester and, you know, testing whatever the tube tester shows them, and they're showing good, and they do work, but they're either noisy, as in they've got a lot of hiss, and or they do just kind of weird, erratic, kind of staticky sounding noises. And I've tried cleaning the pins, and that's not the problem. There's something else going on with them internally, at least when used in this preamp. And or they're super microphonic. Like you just touch the tube and it's like bing, and you hear a big ring in the speaker, which it's going to pick up everything in the room. which you do not want in a high gain preamp. And so, yeah, that's the problem with those RCA tubes. And that's one of the problems with these clear top RCAs is if you crank the volume wide open, which is way past where you would listen, you can definitely hear some hiss from the tubes. But then at like normal listening levels, at least from the seated position, you're not going to hear it. The tubes sound good. And so I kind of overlooked that. The really good part about these clear top RCAs is they have a very balanced presentation, and it's a pretty flat frequency response. It's got really nice strong bass. The mid-range is good but not overdriven, and then the top end has got enough sparkle without being just irritating. And so I found it's a really good balance too. But y'all are here to hear about this new Horizon tube. What does it bring to the table? Well, I burned them in for about 10 hours just to make sure that tubes were going to be good. That was like running music through them. And I'm finding that they bring some detail out of the music that I'm not hearing with the clear top RCAs. They've got a really nice bass response. The mid-range might be a little forward. I mean, it's not bad, but it's there over the RCAs. But there's a clarity and almost like a veil lifted kind of effect over what I've heard from any other 1287 tube. And that's refreshing to hear something that good coming out of this tube type. And I'm really impressed. Now, I will say that there's some kinds of music that might become a little fatiguing listening to these versus the RCA clear tops. And it's nice to have a mix. So I've got something I can swap in to get a little different presentation. But these are definitely going to be in the rotation that I would use in this preamp. And yeah, you should buy a pair of them and give them a try. There's some really, really nice sounding 1287 tubes. For you guys with the MusicShare X7, I would definitely grab a pair of these and give them a try and see what they sound like in that amp. I don't have one of those here to listen to anymore, so I can't, comment on what it would sound like in that amp. But I do know I've tried those other tube types in the MusicShare X7, and I also tried it in this amp, and I think that presentation is going to be the same across amplifiers. Other really good bonus with these new Horizon tubes, they are silent. I could turn the volume wide open, with no music playing, and there's no tube hiss, there's no tube noise. And so for you folks that are really anal about that sort of thing and you just cannot stand, even if at normal volume levels you don't hear it, you don't want to be able to like turn the volume all the way up and hear something, you want that to be silent too, these Horizon tubes are for you. They've really done a good job with, I'm not sure if it's the heater or whether it's the material on the cathode that they said they've improved that is creating this silence, but it's really impressive. And got to give them a shout out for doing such a good job on noise reduction in these tubes. So hopefully this gives you a good idea where these new Horizon 12AU7 tubes kind of stand in this whole lineup. And yeah, I'm impressed. I'm happy to have a set of these to roll into my preamp. And while those RCAs are probably a better choice if you've got fatiguing music that's maybe a little forward, in almost every kind of music other than that, these 12AU7 Horizon tubes are going to be the winner. And they really bring a clarity and bring the mid-range and the vocals forward from what I was hearing with any of these other 12AU7 tubes. So, again, congrats to Psvane for bringing another tube to this lineup that really does sound nice. And honestly, this fits in with what I'm calling the house sound of their tubes. This whole Horizon lineup has that detailed, oriented, maybe a little forward sounding, which is a good thing. I'm not saying that's bad, but it definitely kind of brings the vocals forward and brings out detail that is unique to this whole line of tubes. I heard the same thing in their 300B tube, and I just finished auditioning their KT88 tubes, which I'm going to do a video here soon. Same thing. It's got that same sound. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy my content, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks to you Patreon supporters. Thanks to Psvane for partnering with me and supplying me with some tubes. Like I've said in other videos, I always let you guys know if somebody gave me some tubes or gear or whatever to review. In this case, Psvane did give me these tubes, but there's no financial partnership. I'm not doing some kind of, advertising form or whatever. This is solely my opinion of their tubes, and hopefully you guys trust me that I would not give bogus reviews just for a pair of tubes. So anyway, again, thanks for watching, and have a nice day.